Hello, welcome to episode I don't know what of the DYF podcast. This one came from some YouTube videos I made. So I recorded a few YouTube videos around the idea of freelancer versus agency. And I said to myself, wouldn't it be so nice if I could just reuse these on the podcast? And then I said, yeah, that would be so nice. And so here I am. I think in general, all of these should be pretty podcast friendly. I don't think I show many visual examples, and all the ones I do, I walk through with my words. So I think you're going to really like this. So basically, we're going to dive into number one, what exactly a freelancer versus an agency is, and then move from there into how you can decide which one is best for you to target long-term. And I'll paint a day in the life of each to help give you a little bit more context for what your life is going to look like if you go for one versus the other. So let's dive in. Sorry in advance if I tell you to like and subscribe. You can still do it, but it might be kind of hard on a podcast. But you can subscribe to the podcast feed and you can like it with your heart, even if you can't take an action. So I think it's all right. So why this matters, why you should even watch this video. Ultimately deciding ideally early-ish on if you're targeting being a lifestyle freelancer or growing an agency, it's important because it's going to affect how you make certain types of decisions, especially as it pertains to project fulfillment and lead generation, which we talk about in a different business where we talk about the three aspects of a business. So we'll link to it up here somewhere. Did I say a different business? I'm in a different video. Talk about it in a different video. But basically, a given business breaks down into leads, sales, and product/fulfillment/services. Basically, you have to have a thing to sell. That's fulfillment. You have to have people to sell it to. That's leads. And you have to sell it to them. That's sales. Every business needs these three things, but the way that they look for a freelancer and the way they look for an agency is very, very, very different. And I think a lot of people get led astray with prescriptive advice as if it would be the same for everybody when it's not, and it shouldn't be. So today we're going to talk about these two types of businesses and what differentiates them and how you can decide which one you might want to target, and then go into a little bit of the implications for your strategy based on that. So first, basic definition. In my mind, freelancer equals you in charge of fulfillment. Agency equals not you in charge of fulfillment. So if you have a team member who does the thing that you got paid for, that's an agency. If you're the one who does the thing you got paid for, you're a freelancer. There's this spectrum I like to think about of job, business, and this line here. And freelancer is somewhere in the middle. You don't really run a business. And I think a lot of freelancers, certainly past Zach, get into trouble because they think of it like a real business when they don't actually structure like one. But you also you're not working at a job. So it's somewhere in the middle. Basically, I kind of think of freelancing as owning your own job. You get some of the benefits of the job side and you get some of the benefits of the business side. So the biggest differences between where you are on the spectrum has to do with those three parts of a business. So remember, leads, sales, product, or services. When you work at a job, you only do the fulfillment part. You show up, you do whatever the thing is you're employed to do, and then you go home. And even if the job you work is in the sales or leads department, you're still only in charge of fulfillment within that role. Because when I say leads and sales here, I mean the responsibility for generating leads for yourself in order to be able to do fulfillment. So the job equivalent of that, leads and sales, is leads equals find a job posting, sales equals go to job interviews, and then fulfillment equals be employed at your job. So when you're an employee, you only focus on fulfillment. That's the established thing. And then when you're a business, you are focused on all three, and you're usually trying to pay money to get the three things done wherever possible, rather than paying with your time. If you are trying to run a businessy business that you can scale, and every single time you want a new lead, you have to spend X hours. Every single time you want to sell, you have to spend X hours. And every time you want to deliver the thing they bought, you have to spend X hours. You quickly find you have a very, very small bottleneck of how much on each of the three things you can actually do. And frankly, if you were doing that, I would just call you a freelancer. And so that's that big differentiator of you handling the fulfillment and you paying primarily with time. And the reason that I'm going into this is that when you're a freelancer and you are choosing, yes, I want to be a freelancer forever, I'm signing up to be a freelancer, because being a freelancer over a real business, quote, quote, does have advantages. It'll change how you go about things like leads and sales, because you just don't need a lot of leads and you don't need a lot of sales if it's just you as a freelancer. Whereas if you're running an agency with 7 people in charge of fulfillment, and you need to pay those 7 people every month, whether or not you get projects, got to make a lot of leads come in. Pretty much every agency I know of anyway, the founder started as a freelancer. Most of us start as freelancers. And whenever we start as a freelancer, pretty much without fail, our biggest first problem is leads. So again, leads, sales, fulfillment. Most freelancers have technical skills to handle fulfillment, and that's not really their problem. Most of the time, their problem is, how do I get clients? So that said, we all start with this bottleneck thing to solve being leads. And we have a different video on here talking about the bottlenecks in all the 3 spaces, so we'll link up at the top. But once they conquer this bottleneck, which many don't, but supposing you do eventually conquer this bottleneck, and I'm sure if you stick with it and keep learning, you will, your next bottleneck is going to be fulfillment. Because imagine if today I sent you 12 new clients, and each one's going to take 40 hours to do their project. You've got a fulfillment problem because you do not have 480 hours just sitting around. You would have to have a backlog. You'd have to be really on it. You'd probably get overwhelmed at some point. It would be hard. So we start with this lead problem, this lead bottleneck, and then we move on to a fulfillment bottleneck. I see this all the time. And it's like each of these are really big growth milestones in the business. And how you handle that bottleneck is going to depend on whether you want to be a freelancer or an agency. If you want to be an agency, you need to find a way to increase your fulfillment capacity. If you want to be a freelancer, you don't. If you want to be a freelancer, all you do is raise your rates, and you keep raising your rates so that you can cap your fulfillment capacity based on how many hours you want to work and just charge more for it. And then you get paid a lot more for your time. Neither is right or wrong. They're just different. So now that you have the definition, it's time to decide if it makes more sense for you to run a freelance business or an agency. Originally, I was going to put it right here in the video, but it's already kind of long. So I decided to chop it into a different video. So I recommend that you watch the next video in this little series, which is the how to decide video. And this is now the definition video. So I'm sorry if this definition video teased as if I was going to help you decide here. I wasn't lying. I was gonna, and now I'm not. I'm sorry. But you can also find that other video on YouTube, so it's no big deal. So we'll link to that one in the description of this one. Maybe we'll put it up top if we remember to do it. And regardless of which route you go, I just want to remind you, if you've seen our other videos, you already know this. The thing that's going to make the biggest impact, regardless of which way you go from here, whether you go freelance or agency, the thing that's going to make the biggest impact for raising your rates and getting more clients is going to be the strength of your offer. That is to say, how valuable your service offering feels when you're describing it to a client. To help with this, we have a free course called Charge What You're Worth. If you haven't taken it yet, I think you'd really enjoy it. It's just a 9-day email course. You can download it at dyf.link/offer. So with that freelancer versus agency definition out of the way, let's jump into what was originally YouTube video number 2 and help you decide which one makes sense for you. In this video, we're going to talk about the age-old question of whether you should be targeting growing an agency or just growing as a freelancer. This is really important to at least do some thinking about, even if you don't conclusively decide forever right now, because it's going to affect how you approach certain decisions in your business, primarily decisions around scaling your fulfillment or not, and scaling your lead gen or not. Note for you is that this builds on a previous video where I define the difference between a freelancer and an agency. We'll link to it up here, put it in the description, all that stuff. If you don't know the difference yet, check that video out, because this is about helping you decide. The TLDR is, if you're a freelancer, it means you're handling the fulfillment yourself. So every project you book, you're the one doing the work. If you're running an agency, you're paying somebody else to do the work. That's the fundamental difference. When you're a freelancer, you pretty much just own a job. When you are a business, you're trying to grow the business, you're paying for things with money. So in this video, I'm going to help you decide which one seems like the better fit for you. And we're also going to follow this with a day in the life video where I kind of help you see more what it'd be like to run a successful 6-figure freelance business versus a successful 7-figure agency. So I'll also link to that up here and in this description and all this stuff. For now, we'll focus on the comparison, and I'll talk a little bit about how the work differs and stuff. So there's no right choice here. And I just want to lay that out at first. It's not better to run an agency. It's not better to be a freelancer. They are just different, and it depends on you and your life goals. And that's why I get really annoyed by overly prescriptive advice, because it really does vary. We have a course in DYF University called Build the Right Business, where I walk through all the different possible business structures that freelancers and agencies can go for, from like products, productized services, scaled agency, that kind of stuff. And it really, the thing that I have found from talking with a bunch of freelancers in the DOF community is that I can't just give blanket advice. It really does vary. So here's how I would say that you could decide. Is your idea of a dream business, number one, this? So this is the freelance one first. High lifestyle flexibility. I'll just share my screen. Here's my ugly Notion notes for this one so you can look at it. High lifestyle flexibility, earn a low six-figure income, so like 100 grand a year, whatever. Work very little, like, I don't know, 10, 20 hours a week. Lots of time with friends and family. And when you are working, most of your hours will go to like doing client work, actually doing the fulfillment. And you won't have any passive income. That's freelance. It's worth noting you can build passive income. Like, let's say that you set aside a good amount of money and you put that in the stock market, or you buy real estate, or you start a product-based business. These are things that could create passive or more passive income, but you wouldn't be earning that passive income from your freelancing. Freelancing is just you owning a job. You get paid for the hours you work. You can get more leverage through optimization and stuff, but ultimately it still is time for money. And that's not necessarily a problem because life is time for money. All of the air quotes passive income that exists in the world involves trading time for money because you have to build the machine in the first place. And that takes a long freaking time. The things that are truly passive, like let's say investing in index funds, number one, they're not entirely passive because you still have to buy the things. They still take some time. But typically the more passive something gets, the more it's not that it's passive, it's just that you're changing the risk profile. When you trade time for money, you are exchanging your time for that money. When you go into something more air quotes passive, you are risking your money to create maybe hopefully more money. When you buy an index fund, you are hoping that the money you spend on the index fund is less than what the index fund is worth later. When you buy a rental property, you are hoping that it kicks out more rent than you pay for your mortgage. When you start a product-based business, you hope that the bajillions of dollars you spend building this SaaS product pay you out later with something more than those bajillions of dollars. Like, you're always just exchanging and you're always putting in time in order to get the money, to risk the money, to get the money, So there's no really passive thing that I actually know of, except maybe being born into a trust fund. That's the passive income. So if you can find a way to do that, maybe you let me know because I'm on board. But if you are like the rest of us, I think that this idea of passive income and the lack of it being a problem with the freelance business is a little bit misguided. There are a lot of people in the financial independent space that are like employed developers who work at dev jobs to earn multi-$100,000 a year incomes to put that money into index funds so they can retire at 40. I have a friend who does this. He's been doing this for about the same amount of time as I've been running my freelance business. And I often wonder, did I go the right path? And the answer is yes, because I like what I do. But if the answer was purely so that I could retire young, I don't know. It's not necessarily the right path. And so that's what I would really drive home here, is that growing an agency or a businessy business, like a product-based business, is not necessarily better. It's not even necessarily going to earn you more money. It's just going to be a different life. And ultimately, I think the real decider comes down to this question. Do you want to own a job that has a bit more flexibility than you'd get from a boss, where you get to like decide what clients to take and what clients to turn away? Whereas if you're at a job, you don't get to decide that. Or do you want to grow a business? If you want to own a job where you get paid well and have flexibility, go for freelance. If you want to like grow a business, freelancing is a great place to start, but it should probably not be where you end. But fun fact, you don't have to decide right now. You can decide later. So let's talk a bit about an agency or a product-based business. So for an agency, I think there's a much better route into a mid six-figure income or seven-figure income. I'm not saying it's impossible as a freelancer, but earning seven figures as a freelancer would be very, very, very hard. And I frankly would go so far as to say it's nearly impossible if you are a straight up freelancer who's not delegating anything at all to earn seven figures. Or maybe better than impossible versus possible is like sensible. Because if you want to earn seven figures, $1 million a year divided by 2,000 working hours is what, $5,000 an hour? Let me do that math. $500 an hour. So if you're earning that, if you're earning a $500 effective hourly rate and you're working full time, why are you doing everything yourself? Like, why are you the one checking your email? Why are you the one doing your lead gen cold outreach? Like, why are you doing all that yourself? It doesn't make sense. It's not efficient. You could have somebody doing it way better for way less. And so while it may in theory be possible to be a 7-figure freelancer, I would never recommend that someone try to do that. I'd rather recommend that they try to get more optimization and delegate some stuff and automate some stuff so that they can get more leverage instead of just doing everything themselves. But I digress. If you run an agency / air quotes real business, it's the better path to a multi-6-figure income. I think it's going to be easier to hit like say $500,000 a year as an agency owner than as a freelancer. It'd be very, very hard as a freelancer because you're going to hit bottlenecks with the amount of value that you can deliver for the price, because your pool of clients you can deliver that value to, it shrinks as you charge more. And it's a better route to 7 figures in my mind. The biggest thing that I think is a differentiator is that you get to be in the shoes, and I didn't appreciate this when I was freelancing. You get to be in the shoes of like playing the game of business. You don't really get to do that as a freelancer. So when I say playing the game of business, it's almost like building this machine or assembling this puzzle where you like see all these moving parts, these discrete systems that are spinning along, and you see like this, let's think of it, spinning plates, right? You see this plate starting to get wobbly, so you correct that one, touch that one, touch that one. You like keep all these different plates spinning. That's kind of like the game of business. You look at the idea of the funnel, like, are we weak with our lead gen? Remember those 3 categories: lead gen, sales, fulfillment. Are we weak in fulfillment? Do I need to improve that today? Do I need to marshal resources on the team to improve this thing? Where are we weak? Where do we need to improve? What's the funnel? Where can we optimize? We have a different video that's the day in the life video, so I'll go into more detail of that kind of stuff in that one. I'll link to it up here in the description. But ultimately, if you're going for that agency route or real business, air quotes, route, most of your time is going to go to like building the business. And you will have to spend longer doing that to get a viable income in your pocket, but you also raise the ceiling of what you can earn. So you're not going to be spending time on a day-to-day basis fulfilling the projects, or at least you won't any longer than you have to. You're always going to be trying to get fulfillment off your plate so that you can continue growing the business. If you have to do the fulfillment yourself, you can't really grow the business very much. And the net result of all this is that you essentially put in more time up front to create more money with less work later. If you do manage to spin the plates and create the systems where you can get leads generated without your time spent, and you can get sales closed without your time spent, and you can get projects fulfilled without your time spent, then that's like pretty passive income. But the reason it's not passive is because you'll always have to keep a plate spinning here and there, but you might hire a manager and you only have to spin the manager plate, and the manager spins the staff plates. But there are always plates to spin until you sell your thing. Even if it's 5 minutes every 6 months, there will always be some kind of spinning happening. And it's not passive also because it takes a lot more work to get there. There's so many more problems to solve and milestones to overcome to get there. So is it truly passive if it took 20 times the work to get there? I'll leave that to you to decide. From here, I would say check out the day in the life video where I go into a bit more detail of what it would look like running a really successful agency versus what it would look like running a successful freelance business. We'll link to that below, up here, wherever. And if you haven't yet gone through the free Charge What You're Worth course that we have, I would recommend you check that out. Basically, in that course, we talk about the offer. So your service offering and the value it produces for your clients and how you position it. And that's really, really important regardless of whether you go freelance or agency. Both of those business models rely on a really, really strong offer in order to be successful. So if you want to check that out, as I said, it's free, 9-day email course, dyf.link/offer. So with that quick comparison done, let's now jump into what was originally YouTube video number 3 and do the day in the life comparison of 6-figure freelancer versus 7-figure agency. The reason I wanted to do this video is to show that ultimately running a 6-figure freelance business that's optimized for lifestyle design versus a 7-figure agency that's optimized for revenue and growth, like there's not necessarily a better or worse. It kind of depends on your goals and your preferences and your stage of business. This is kind of the 3rd video in almost a series. I don't know if we're officially going to call it a series, but we've got 2 others. I'll link to them in the description. Maybe we'll put them up here. One of them is the definition of freelancer versus agency. So if you don't know that, go check that one out for a bit more context. And then the one before this was kind of like how to decide on freelancer versus agency. And then this one is like a first person kind of in the weeds, help you experience what a day in your life would look like. So check those out if you think you need the prerequisite knowledge. Otherwise, let's dive in here. The TLDW, too long didn't watch, of those videos is basically, number 1, freelancer means you do the fulfillment yourself versus agency means Somebody else who you pay does the fulfillment. That's the difference. And then the deciding which one's right for you comes down to whether you prioritize lifestyle freedom and working as little as possible versus creating a business that generates as much money as possible. And if you watched that previous video and you're having trouble decide, maybe this day in the life thing will help you decide. So I believe most people who want to be six-figure freelancers, they primarily want that like high lifestyle control freelancer lifestyle. When I was digital nomading as a freelancer, not working a lot of hours, I think, at the time I was bored, but I think a lot of freelancers want what I had then, even if I didn't want what I had when I had it. So that like high lifestyle control freelancer lifestyle would look like this. So let's assume you make like, I don't know, 100 grand a year. I think most freelancers who are going for this high lifestyle control thing could pretty feasibly make like 70K a year to 150K a year, somewhere in there. Once you try to push past that, you're gonna it's hard to work not a lot and make a lot if you're solo and you're not having a team member help you with fulfillment. So this is assuming you're doing most of the work yourself. The high lifestyle control day in the life would be like you wake up whenever the hell you want, take a casual walk, maybe on the beach. Stereotypically, it would be on the beach. So let's say you're near a beach. Let's say you're not near a beach. You fly somewhere with a beach. Okay, so you fly to Bali, you wake up, you eat like a banana pancake made by someone named Ketut, probably. Lots of people are named Ketut in Bali. Then you take a walk by the beach, which if you're in Bali, I don't recommend you be by the beaches because it means you're in Kuta. Kuta's not so great. But nonetheless, you take your walk on the beach because it's a stereotypical day in the life. And once you've eaten all the banana pancakes and you have all the brain fog, you take some ADHD medication and you go to a cafe and work. When you're at that cafe, you work there until, I don't know, let's say you work 2 hours there and you're like, no, I want to go to a different cafe. And so you leave and you go to a different cafe and you work there for a couple hours. And then you're like, it's 2 p.m. I want to go surf. And so you go do some surfing or something. I guess you're again at the beach in Bali. Not a fan personally, but nonetheless, you're doing it. You do your surfing. Maybe you spend an hour like answering emails, talking to clients. You do a little bit of prospecting, however it is that you get clients. And that's your life. You do that every day. So you work probably 3 or 4 hours a day, maybe just a couple of days a week on client work. You earn a cool 70 to 150K a year, and that's all you do. That's your life forever. The main thing is you are the one doing client work. So if you're a web designer, you're the one designing the websites. If you're a coder, you're the one writing the code. So your jobs that you will be responsible for are always going to be fulfillment and lead gen. So no matter how many walks you take on the beach and how many banana pancakes you eat, you always got to write the code. There's no way out of that. That's your life. But it's pretty cool because you got to spend a lot of time eating banana pancakes, hanging out with your family, surfing. The main thing that differentiates this lifestyle from a highly flexible remote job is pretty much just that you get to decide which clients you turn away, and probably the willingness of your employer to have you eating all those pancakes and taking all those surf breaks. Who knows what their openness would be. But ultimately, you're just owning your own job. You got to get your own clients. Whereas if you were at a job, you don't get clients. You get the job, they give you the work to do. You have to create the work to do or pay somebody to do it. Let's talk a bit about what it looks like to run an agency. To be clear, you can still run an agency or a businessy business in Bali, on the beach, eating pancakes, all that crap. But in my mind, it becomes quite a lot harder. I don't think that you can really, in my experience, do that kind of stuff as quickly. You have to establish quite a lot of self-sufficient structures, tongue twister, before you can realistically do that kind of lifestyle. Because you're working with humans. You need to talk to humans. And until the business is humming along like clockwork, which, by the way, good book, Mike Michalowicz, Clockwork, really relevant for running an agency. Until you have the business set up to where it actually doesn't really need you, you can't just sod off and go surfing. You need to talk to your team. You need to be debugging things. You need to be building your systems. But what it unlocks for you is eventually, one day, you can go surfing for a month straight and eat so many banana pancakes that you just want to throw up all the time, and your business won't burn down. My friend Joanna Galval, she was on the DYF podcast. You can check out her episode. She wanted to clockworkify her business to remove herself from it so that she could take maternity leave without the business burning down, and she was able to do it. If you're a freelancer and you want to take a maternity leave the business gets paused. There's no way that your business can keep servicing clients if you're not doing it. So the payoff is huge, but the energy expenditure to get there is also huge. And I think a lot of people downplay it. However, if you do have the aspiration to run a business, like if that's a thing you want to do, you wake up and you say, oh, I want to run a business one day. Like I want to run a 7-figure business. I want a thing that makes a lot of freaking money and I'm down to put in a bunch of work to get it there. Then I think it's a really good way to go. I had a lot of years where I was freelancing and I didn't want to be, where I felt kind of stalled because I didn't want to be doing it, but I accidentally constrained myself and created a situation I couldn't escape from, which I talk about in a different video about how many freelancers make a mistake when trying to scale. I won't get into it here. We're already at 8 minutes, trying to keep these things tight. But I tell you, you can find a video one day on our YouTube, or maybe today on our YouTube about this very thing. Let's talk about a day in the life of the agency. So you wake up and you're probably going to be spending a lot of your time on strategy and debugging. I have this metaphor. I think of a lot of like spinning plates. So there are these 3 categories of every business: lead gen, sales, fulfillment. If you are running an agency, the goal is to be able to get each of these 3 categories to do their thing without your time taken. So ideally, you would have a business where you're paying money to get all the leads you need. And maybe you're paying that money to like a service, like say Facebook ads, you're just giving them dollars, or you're paying that money to somebody on your team to do their job, which results in the thing. So let's say you have someone on your team who's doing cold outreach. You pay them money, they generate leads, boom, leads for money. Sales, again, you want to be converting your leads into customers without it taking your time, ideally. But the fact for all of these things is that in order to get to the point where it doesn't take your time, you're going to probably have to spend time at first. It's really hard to delegate things if you don't understand how they work, at least in my experience. I have not yet met a business owner who does really, really well, who delegates stuff that they entirely don't understand without paying out the ass to do so. Because the only way to know that this person you're delegating something to is doing it well is to ensure that they're like the best at what they do. And people who are the best at what they do are very, very, very expensive. And so the route that most freelancers who scale an agency will go, or at least the route I personally prefer to go, is understanding how to do something myself, finding the streamlined process, creating the SOP, delegating it to somebody else. That's how most of the things that I personally scale and delegate go. So your life and your day-to-day as an agency owner, like a 7-figure agency owner, is basically going to be looking at those 3 categories: lead gen, sales, fulfillment, and asking yourself which of them is weakest and needs the most improvement. Which of them do you want to like dedicate time and energy to make the business more profitable? I like this personally because it's like, I think of it as like playing the video game of business. But back when I was freelancing, I was really resistant to it because I wanted each project to be interesting. I have ADHD, so I like novelty and excitement, and the idea of doing templated websites sounded really boring. But as a result, I forced myself to be stuck in fulfillment because I couldn't reliably delegate it, which meant I prevented myself from playing the video game of business, which I quite enjoy, as it turns out. I'll talk a bit more about that in other videos about productization and reducing project variability. For now, let's keep focused on the day of life. So you wake up, you analyze these areas, you marshal team resources or dollars to help solve things better. So it might mean you talk to a team member and have them go on some project that's going to improve your lead gen, or your sales, or your fulfillment, and all the things that these branch into. Because there's certain things like, let's say, for example, you want to create recurring revenue in your agency. Does that count as fulfillment? Does it count as sales? Does it count as lead gen? Maybe all 3, maybe little bits from here, from here, from here. Because if you want recurring revenue, you need a way to provide recurring value, which means that you need a product to sell, or you need a service that will provide value each month, which is in the fulfillment category. In order to get people to buy it, you have to sell it to them. Do you sell it to past clients? Do you sell it to new clients? You get what I'm getting at. So it becomes this big puzzle of constant analysis, putting money and humans into different slots to try to create the outcome that you want, to create a better life for you, your team, your clients, etc. You're going to be spending a lot of time either managing your team directly when you're small, or managing the managers who manage your team when you're bigger. You're going to spend time either directly looking at funnel metrics when you're small, or talking to the marketing people who have the funnel metrics who can parse them and give them to you when you're bigger. You make your decisions based on data and based on what you're seeing and feeling as the person leading the thing, or based on what the managers who are in charge of perceiving things are seeing and feeling. you will likely always have to lend a hand somewhere until you're doing really, 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 really well, like 8 figures plus. That hand might get lent in lead gen, it might get lent in sales, it might get lent in fulfillment. But whenever you do, you're likely always thinking of like, what's the process behind what I'm doing right now? What's the secret sauce that I need to find a way to distill into an SOP? And a lot of founders, they end up finding that because, I don't know if it was this video or another one, I talked about the fallacy of quote passive income and how, you're always gonna be working. There are always gonna be things you have to do. So most likely one day you're gonna hit a point where you're like, this is good. I'm happy to stay here. And you'll probably find parts of the process that you enjoy the most, that leverage your secret sauce the most, that you do want to do the fulfillment for. And that's totally cool. I know founders of like 7 and 8 figure businesses who still like to handle the sales calls. But it's fine because maybe for them, a sales call, a single 20-minute or 30-minute sales call generates $50,000 to $100,000 in revenue. So they're not doing a million of them and they like them. And they might find that if they were to try to delegate that to a team member, it's hard to get the conversion rates as great, or it's hard to like get the same qualitative experience. And so they choose to keep it. So hopefully these 2 days in the life are helpful for you. Nothing is ever set in stone. And a lot of the time you're not going to know what you like until you try it. The main reason I wanted to create this is that when I was running an agency, I didn't enjoy it. But I also ran my agency in what I kind of consider to be the wrong way, which is to say every project was different. It wasn't based on like really SOPs or anything. And so it meant that in order for me to have projects fulfilled by a team member, I had to find team members who were really, 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 really good, who had a lot of secret sauce themselves. What it meant in the end was that most of my time went to like reviewing other people's work, management, quality assurance, and just all the other shit that I don't really like as an ADHDer. I really like getting things 80-20 and like doing the fun initial creation, but I do not like taking things through the finish line. And when I grew my agency that way, like my whole life became taking things through the finish line. But where I went wrong is my conclusion from there was like, oh, growing an agency doesn't work. I don't want to grow an agency. And I see some freelancers making that mistake in the community as well. And it's a shame because if only I had structured the business in a way that was more supportive of proper delegation and scaling, I totally would have enjoyed it. And I spent like 6 years thinking I would never enjoy scaling an agency when in truth, all it actually was that I wouldn't have enjoyed scaling that kind of agency. So I'd love if you leave a comment below, which day in the life sounds cooler to you? Do you lean towards like lifestyle control freelancer? Do you like the idea of businessy business agency? Do you like the idea of the spinning plates, building the video game business? Or do you just want to have a chill life where you eat banana pancakes and surf? Leave a comment. I'd love to hear. And regardless of which route you go, I've found that one of the most important things you can do to nail your lead gen and sales quadrants, and not really quadrants if it's made out of 3, right? But nonetheless, to have strong lead gen and sales, one of the best things you can do is have a really valuable offer. So that is to say, your service offering, when you describe it to a prospective client, they think, ooh, I want that. That sounds like it's going to be super duper valuable, make me a bunch of money. We teach you how to do this in our free Charge What You're Worth email course. So if you haven't taken that yet, I'd recommend you check it out. It's at dyf.link/offer. Free 9-day email course. We basically go into how to position your services to be valuable to clients, how to sell, how to increase their value, that kind of thing. So dyf.link/offer. So hopefully you enjoyed this episode. I would love it if you could tell me if you do. I think one of the things I find hardest about the podcast is that I don't really know what people like. I don't know if people prefer interviews. I don't know if people prefer the 6 months to 6 figures coaching thing. I don't know if people would prefer that I literally just copy and paste YouTube videos on here and have little 5-minute episodes. I honestly have no freaking idea. So if you, as somebody who clearly just listened to a whole podcast episode, could just shoot me an email and tell me, I would love you forever, at least in a context that's appropriate for our relationship level. I would love you. And that's just hello@doubleyourfreelancing.com. Thanks for being here, and see you in the next episode.